Before we start, I'd like to ask you to put your hands together for Craig Waters, the chairman of the Melbourne VMUG. It is the biggest VMUG in Australia. Southern Hemisphere, and there's a reason for that, right? There's a lot of time and effort that goes into events like this, and the quarterly VMUGs and the whole community that Craig puts on his shoulders and takes care of tirelessly. So thank you very much, Craig. Absolutely.
Thanks, Graham.
All right. I knew I was in the right place this morning when I turned up a little bit late and nearly bowled somebody over in the car park with a VMware backpack. So found it. My name is Tim Hartman. I'm the Senior Systems Engineering Manager for Southern Region in Australia, which is Victoria, South Australia, WA and New Zealand right now. And basically what I do is manage a whole bunch of engineers or pre-sales engineers across that region, for partnering and mid-size and large enterprise customers. Now this is a VMUG, so you've already bought everything we've got, right? So I won't do any sales pitches to you today. It's more just a quick introduction as to what's going on with VMware right now, and also a little background, I guess. So some of the stats you've already seen from Craig's presentation, but there's it's a big community. There's about 12,000 VMware user group members globally today. There's about 400 registrations for this event here in Melbourne. And if you break that down by state, where we've got other chapters for the VMUGs, Victoria is by far the biggest. It's 34% of our membership. So well done, everybody. Well done, Craig. Well done, Nathan, and the steering committee. And thank you, obviously, for your support in running the user groups and sharing ideas. So first, a couple of thanks. Obviously Craig Waters, but also the committee, Tony Maffel, Damien, sorry, spelling mistake on my part, Calvert, Andrew Dauncey, the VMware representatives, Nathan Wheat, who helps us out, Joe Montecastro, who runs the network out of Sydney. And we've also got a number of international guests that came along to support this event. So Mike Laverick, Stephen Foskett, Alistair Cook, and Mike Webster. If you need to know anything about virtualizing Oracle or virtualizing SAP or any mission critical stuff or Unix to virtual, or go and talk to Mike Webster. He's the man's got a propeller the size of a galaxy. It's great. Now, bit of fun. This was VMworld, the photo of the CTO party. So, Craig, are you paying attention? You're on Twitter. That's not a photo bomb. Incriminating evidence. That's the first time I actually properly got introduced to Craig, even though I've been with VMware for the last 6 years. But we found out we both started out with electronics, doing analog synthesizers at the same time. So we had so the whole event, we basically stood there with beers talking about TB303s, TR808s, and Ataris, ZX81s. It's great. And Nick Bradford from Telstra as well. I do actually have lips. They just didn't come out in the photo. So on to the serious stuff. So the only constant thing is change. It happens, right? So we've got a new CEO, Pat Gelsinger, that was brought on board to really take VMware to the next step, the next step in our journey. So there's some rationalization going on in our portfolio at the moment, which I'll go through in a second. You've probably seen some announcements in the press already about vFabric being spun off into a separate company that's going to be managed by Paul Moritz, our ex-CEO now. And really, from our perspective, it's doubling down on core technology plus the ancillaries, which I'll go through in a second under three broad themes. But just to set the theme a little bit here, I mean, who's read that article? I mean, we've had it in our PowerPoint presentations for the last 6 months or so. But it's a good read. If you do dig it up, go to the Wall Street Journal and have a read, Why Software is Eating the World. It's mostly focused on the mobile side, the applications, so the RESTful way of interacting with systems. But if you extrapolate that out across everything, not just applications and devices and systems, but also data centers and infrastructure, it becomes a very, very interesting proposition in terms of how you think about big data, how you think about managing systems, and how you consume the application as well as the data. It's a very eye-opening exercise. So whereas in the past it was very much static content that you consume, it becomes a whole dynamic world. We've had a number of conversations, particularly with government, where the government is basically saying, look, we're very difficult to interact with. We've got all this information that is actually in the public domain that we can't deliver. How do we do that? How do we give people mobile access to stuff that is rightfully theirs? And put that together with other things like Google Maps and those types of things. If you think about the SES, for example, with all the fires that are going on right now. So is that road blocked? Yes, it is. Well, here's the information. There's the data in a very easy, nicely consumed way, or consumable way. The second thing is really that I'd like to share with you is an article that was written by Chris Wolf, who's an analyst. And he says he finally said it, basically, and that's really, if you look at the industry today, there's a lot of vendors out there that are trying to tell you exactly the same thing, but do it in a slightly different way. Especially when it comes to private cloud. If you don't like the word cloud, it's IT as a service, or on-demand IT resources. It really comes down to keeping things very simple. So what you'll see here from VMware is us trying to simplify things down to the level where it can be very easy and very elastic, together with the vendors out there in the hallway that are supporting this event. Absolutely. But it's really an admission that don't try and build this Frankenstein piece of infrastructure that's not going to deliver, even though the components as they are do add up to something that theoretically should work. So that's again, it's a very good article to read up on, simplicity. And the last thing is really, we're all talking about cloud, we're all talking about, how beautiful it's going to be when everything is sitting in a 21-degree data center, managed and hosted by somebody else. But the primary role of IT, if you read this article from Gigamon, is really moving away from managing the nuts and bolts in the infrastructure to really, assisting the application owners and the application developers in delivering their content to the masses and move a lot faster. So, the promise of cloud is that happens at somebody else's data center, but the same thing applies to, internal data centers or internal systems if you have certain constraints like data sovereignty, etc. So it's a very interesting proposition. So just in the interest of time, I've got 10 minutes left. I'll just run through this fairly quickly. These are the top 5 priorities for CIOs according to Gartner: analytics and business intelligence, so gathering information feeds from all sorts of different systems, managing those and coming up with an intelligent way of interpreting those. An interesting example there was very recently, how Triple J's got the hottest 100, and this guy wrote a script that analyzed the Twitter feeds for people nominating the songs that they preferred, and based on that he came up with his warmest 100. And the warmest 100 was actually quite close to the hottest 100. So it's an interesting way of analyzing data. So, and that happened to the point where the booking or the bookies basically said, look, you can't place any bets on this because the answer is already here, right, based on that feed. Mobile technologies, obviously, I won't talk about that. Cloud computing, you know about that as well. Collaboration and workforce technology. If you do go to the end user computing sessions today, it's very interesting how, what we're bringing out later this year works into that. So, some of our people like Todd will be presenting on that technology for you. And then last but not least, legacy modernization. You know, stuff gets old. It's an easy one. So the three key focus areas for VMware in 2013, so going forward, number one is the software-defined data center. So thinking back to, you know, programmatically working with a virtual data center instead of, you know, different parts. The second part is, or the second area is hybrid cloud. So connecting two data centers together seamlessly. I've got a slide on the nicira acquisition in a second that some of you have already asked me about, which is very promising technology from a network virtualization perspective. And then last but not least, the end user computing space. So software-defined data center, I've already spoken about it a little bit, but it's basically being able to address, you know, your compute resources, your storage resources, your network resources, your security resources, and anything that implies infrastructure in a programmatic way. That's essentially what it boils down to. So I think there's going to be a session on SDDC today. Do attend it if you're interested in that side. I hate it when slides build, but there we go. So NVP from nicira, the Network Virtualization Platform, in a nutshell, what it does, it treats the network as a big pipe in your data center to the point of ingress-egress. And what that means is that we overlay another network on top of that big pipe that's already there. So anything that's got where there's connectivity, any data center where there's connectivity across the board, we overlay another network on top of that and assign that to the virtual switching environment. The second piece of that is so the benefit is that when you provision a virtual machine and you connect it to a network, there's no physical network changes that you need to do. There's no network changes that you have to make in terms of VLAN and port groups and all that stuff. It just happens automatically, because the biggest problem we've got today with provisioning virtual machines in data centers and cloud is when you create a virtual machine, it takes 5 seconds to build it or clone it. Probably an exaggeration, maybe 2 minutes. But then from that point, there's about 4 or 5 days of stuff that needs to happen that IT needs to do in the background in terms of firewalling, in terms of networking, in terms of, all that stuff that needs to be associated with that machine. This will automate all that, all the networking side. It's very interesting. Later on this year, you'll see some interesting announcements coming out around that, but it's very promising technology. In terms of the management portfolio, there's 3 areas or 3 broad categories that we look at today, and that we're expanding on, and it's really the provisioning side of systems, so the portal, if you like. Then the operations management, how well does it perform? How well is it running? When am I going to run out of capacity? Where's the bottleneck? All that sort of stuff. And then last but not least, it's the business management side. So how do you report back to your CIO and the businesses within your organization as to what they consume and how much? Got it. 5 minutes running out of time. So what are they using and how much capacity are they consuming and when are they going to run out of space? So it really allows you to be, a lot more business focused in terms of deploying resources. I won't go through this in detail, but the final area that I'd like to touch on is really the fact that we're very cognizant of the fact that we're not in this alone. There's more APIs out there that address infrastructure than VMware vCloud. So what you'll see us come out with over time is a lot of different connectors for a lot of different infrastructures or cloud APIs, if you like. So that gives you, so you can standardize as a business on vCloud or AWS or Azure, and it'll just work. Right? So that's the next piece. So this is the whole stack, if you like. On the end user computing side, I don't have time to go through it, but it's really presenting a fundamentally different way to consuming resources from a data center and presenting that to the end users in terms of the apps, the data, as well as the virtual machines. Last but not least is the VMware Education Services booth is out the front as well. If you are interested, there are some specials on at the moment. You can also get the latest information about our courses. So that's a plug for Edmundo. And with that, I wish you all a great conference today, and enjoy yourselves. Thank you very much.